What's going on, everybody? Welcome in. It is Saturday, so happy Saturday, happy weekend to everybody. I'm your host for today's festivity, Jacob at Richardson 13. I am running solo today. Today is my first official video mock draft of the season. So we are looking at Cleveland Browns mock draft 1.0. This is a special episode of the Barker Brown Show. We will, going forward, every Saturday, we'll have a draft-centric show for you guys. Sometimes I'll be solo, sometimes I won't. But today is the first of those series. We are presented by our amazing friends over at Homage. I'm wearing a Cavaliers Homage Let Them Know shirt going on. We got it here. Check out our friends over at Homage. There's a link in the description down below. They got everything you need. Ohio State, Browns, Cavs, Guardians, all the other NFL teams, Buckeyes. You got all that kind of great stuff for you guys, so you can go check those guys out. So today, like I said, we're going to do our first mock draft of the season, official mock draft of the season, as I have written a couple of them for Dog Pound Daily, including this one that released earlier in the week. I wanted this to come out in conjunction with that, and then it just didn't manage to be able to do that. So we're just kind of a little bit busy week, so we're just going to be just a little bit behind what I wanted us to be for this. Okay, let me see if I can pull this up for you guys real quick so that I've got everything in front of me with my mock draft and stuff. Okay, so this is a very interesting draft, I think, off the top, because we talked last year about how bad the defensive tackle class was. I wouldn't call this game or this class a great defensive tackle class, but I think top to bottom, there isn't, like, you had Jordan Davis and like Devontae Wyatt, and then it was just a bunch of dudes last year, and it was just this massive drop off. And I think some of these guys at the top versus some of these guys in the middle rounds, I don't quite think it's the same drop off. I think there's some really nice role players, not a ton of like 3-down guys. Like Byron Young is my favorite probably defensive tackle prospect in the draft that's realistic for the Browns, and I think he can be a 3-down player, maybe not right away. All right, so these mock draft simulators, I use NFL Mock Draft Database, which compiles all the big boards across the internet and averages them out. So you may see a guy that a lot of boards have in the top 10 at 12 because other drafts have him lower, other boards. And so it puts it together, and I think it's probably the closest in terms of like a consensus big board. I think it does a really good job of that. They do not have the Browns' third-round pick in here yet because one of the third-round picks is going to Houston for Watson. I'm not sure which one it's going to be yet, but they will have either their own or a compensatory pick from the Kwesi hiring. So that is not in here, so we will have one less pick for now, because without an actual simulator, I don't really want to do these things. So starting at number 1, I go Mazi Smith, the defensive tackle out of Michigan. Very interesting kind of situation with him. He faces felony weapon charges. He did not have a concealed carry permit for a handgun that he had on his person during a traffic stop. So he was cited with that. He does face felony gun charges. They didn't suspend him at Michigan unless I don't know. Like, I'm not a lawyer, so like I'm not going to say anything like, oh, he's not going to go to, but it seems like if something was going to be happening that was really going to affect him, we know the Browns clearly, as long as there's not criminal charges, don't have a problem with potentially taking a swing at a guy with some issues. So that's the one thing drawback here, is we don't know really what's going on with that sort of thing, but it doesn't seem like he's going to get like suspended by the NFL. I don't think, but crazier things have happened, right? So he checks in well over 300 pounds. I tell you guys this all the time. I'd get me the biggest, fattest dude and put him in that defensive tackle room so that we can kind of try to fix this situation. But I really like Mazi Smith coming out. He's got a lot to work on as a pass rusher, but he is going to eat blocks. He is going to anchor the middle of that line. He is not going to be driven 7 yards back into his linebackers' laps. He's going to allow the athletic freaks of JOK, the Tony Fields, the Anthony Walker, all these guys that they like, that they want to keep clean at linebacker. Mazi Smith is that guy. I don't know. I think they're going to change their philosophy with defensive tackle. We've seen some issues here with the way they are drafting these guys, and they're prioritizing pass rush. They've still got some guys they could potentially draft later on, or sign or things like that, or maybe even Jordan Elliott, I think, is still on his rookie deal, so he'll probably still be around at least for camp. So I truly think that one of these picks, and probably the top one, the higher one that they use for own defensive tackle, I think they're going to go after a run stuffer. And that is exactly what Mazi Smith is. He plays with a pretty good pad level. Sometimes he gets a little bit high and a little off balance. He lacks refinement in terms of becoming he needs to work on technique as a pass rusher. I think if he can develop some technique, he has the physical tools to get it done. I just think, right now you can see some strides too. You can see if you go watch him in 2021 versus 2022, you've seen some strides. But I think he's exactly what the doctor ordered at defensive tackle, and I think it would be a big boost. So I'm going to go to what it would be the 4th round pick, since that's what this simulator has, a pick 98 at the time. I'm going Chris Smith the second, the safety from Georgia. And boy, do I have fun watching Chris Smith play. He is exactly what we have been clamoring for in Cleveland, and that's a center fielder, a true free safety. They still don't have one. They still don't have one right now as we talk. What are we at? Week 14, the 13th game. They don't have one. Sendejo may have been one, I guess. Technically, he's probably like the only one they really have had. I mean, they've got a bunch of linebackers that can play, some safeties like John Johnson and Grant Delpit that can play some free safety, but aren't true free safeties. Chris Smith is exactly that. He's a center fielder, a deep safety who will come crashing downhill in the run. I mean, he diagnoses plays very well, very quickly, has that high football IQ that you like, and he's got the speed and the burst to come up and fill some holes in run game. I mean, I would say if you look at his, if you're not looking at full games, you're just looking at highlights, you're going to see a lot of Chris Smith tackles for a loss and tackles for 2-3 yard gains where he was started out 10-15 yards off the line of scrimmage and he comes down and makes a play a couple of yards off he's exactly what they need. They need a free safety that can play the ball. He has good ball skills, has I think 2 or 3 pick sixes in his back pocket. One in the one this year that I can remember having just watched, I'm trying to think of who it was he was playing. It was just, he's got what you want from a deep safety. It's just what he is. He reads the play really well. He diagnoses it. He reacts quickly. He has good ball skills to play the ball. He tracks it well in the air. He is what you need to stick back there so that if you keep John Johnson, and Grant Delpit I think played really well over the last 4 or 5 games. And I think, not really well, but he's played well. And he just becomes that guy that is deep, that allows you to play more man coverage and really create some of these one-on-one opportunities to get creative because you have a guy that can roam deep. And I think Chris Smith would, if he's there, if he falls, if the Browns will have a 3rd round pick that would be higher than 98, I would absolutely spend that on Chris Smith. So I moved to the 2nd, 4th round pick 113, as we sit right here. And I'm sorry, not 1/3. Yeah. So anyway, we've moved to the 4th round pick. It doesn't matter where they are right now. Sam LaPorta, tight end from Iowa. I really like Sam LaPorta as a day 3 player. I'm not really sure he should go any higher than that. I just think that this becomes interesting because people are going to argue that they would probably rather have a wide receiver than a tight end in this draft. And I would argue that Sam LaPorta is a wide receiver in a tight end's body. In terms of the style of player he is, think Mike Gesicki of the Dolphins, where you think of Mike Gesicki as a receiving option. You don't think of him blocking very much. And I think that's kind of what Sam LaPorta is. They line him up out wide in the slot and some things like that, which is the Browns like to do. I think he is a very similar player to I said Mike Gesicki, Harrison Bryant. I just blanked there for a second. Sorry. Harrison Bryant as well. kind of the similar type of guy where he's a willing blocker. He's an effort blocker. He'll do his best, but he definitely needs some technique and refinement. Of course, Bill Callahan being around would make you feel pretty good about them being able to elevate that and trying to get that stuff going with LaPorta. But he's fun. He's got size, decent speed, decent athleticism. He's not going to like blow you away. But the Browns need to find a third tight end, and now they may elect to go for a third tight end that is a better blocker. But I think some tight end, wide receiver, hybrid receiving options, they need to add some more weapons depth-wise because they've been, challenged by some injuries at the pass catcher position. That would require them also to potentially sign a blocking tight end if this was the case, because Njoku has dealt with some injuries this year, and you just don't want to put it all on have nothing but receiving tight ends if David Njoku goes down. But Sam LaPorta, a very interesting player. Okay, so moving on to the fifth round, the first of the 5-round picks, 2 fifths, a sixth, and a seventh left here. I got Cooper Beebe, the offensive tackle from Kansas State. This is a player that a lot of draft boards right now are calling him a guard. I looked back at the numbers. I don't know where he projects best. I haven't been able to see enough tape of everything because he has played 4 of the 5 offensive line positions. And that's why I think the Browns could very well covet Cooper Beebe, because he played, I think he has more starts at tackle than he does at guard, if I remember correctly. But I think the Browns are going to target a tackle. I think they need to work on tackle. I think Conklin probably walks. I think they probably let Chris Hubbard walk. Based on Hudson's numbers and snap counts going down, I'm not as confident as I was that they like him. He's had some poor performances in mop-up duty as of late, after I thought he had a good showing for Conklin early in the year, as well as a good camp in preseason. It's I'm not sure what's going on there. So I think they'll target a tackle. But if I get a situation like this where Beebe is in a very similar offensive scheme in Kansas State, but can play 4 of the 5 positions like Chris Hubbard, you've seen this offensive line be banged up here and there. I think that could really turn to a guy like that in the 5th round. Moving on to the second of the 5th round picks, I got Sean Tucker, the running back from Syracuse. So you're just the same thing as I'm talking about with tackle. You're probably watching Dearness Johnson and Kareem Hunt walk. It's very interesting that they haven't used Dearness Johnson at all this season. It's kind of weird to me, but it is what it is. Sean Tucker is very interesting. A smaller back, under 200 pounds, more of a scat back role. He's not going to run with the authority of Kareem Hunt or the patience of Nick Chubb, but back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, including 1,400 yards for Syracuse last season. He's just a guy that I think has some characteristics and some tools that you could work with, and you could put there as your, behind Nick Chubb and Jerome Ford, and maybe they re-sign Dearness Johnson. I really don't know what's going to happen with that, but they need a running back depth, offensive line depth. That's where I think they lean to start, the 5th round, those 2 back-to-back picks. Moving on, I've got Ivan Pace Jr., so the linebacker from Cincinnati, the transfer over to Cincinnati. Tackling machine. I mean, that's what Cleveland needs at the position more than anything is a tackling machine, because, I thought that it was going to be Jacob Phillips, and I keep coming back to that one. It really bothers me, just because I thought he was going to be this tackling machine. But Ivan Pace starts, at Miami, Ohio, and he transfers to Cincinnati this year. So you're looking at 2 seasons really as a starter. These last 2 seasons, he had only played 9 games his first 2 years. But you look at him at Miami, Ohio last year, 125 tackles, 13 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, and an interception. This year at Cincinnati, takes a step up from the MAC to the American Conference. He gets 119 tackles, 18 and a half tackles for loss, and 8 sacks. He's hanging around there late in the 5th, when in this case it was a 6th round pick. He's hanging out there late. I mean, I have no problem trying to find a Mike backer that has multiple 100 tackle seasons. He's he gives up a little bit, height wise, only at 6 foot tall, but he's 239 pounds. He plays a little bit bigger than that. And that's what they need, is a big, strong guy that doesn't miss tackles. And that's exactly what you can get with Pace in the 6th round here. So I'm going to wrap up our first official mock draft with Carl Brooks, the defensive tackle from Bowling Green, who I got to watch play in person very recently. And he is your pass rushing D tackle. That is where I think this could be a really interesting draft, where you see potentially the big meat at the top with, a guy like Mazi Smith, or maybe they get Byron Young to fall there from Alabama or something like that. And they circle back later in the draft. They say Carl Brooks, he does play Bowling Green. He plays in the MAC. So I completely understand that. But this feels like to me, just like drafting Isaiah Thomas. So you're looking at a guy 6'4", 280 pounds. He can play inside, he can play outside. This season, 10 sacks this season, 7.5 last year, 18 tackles for loss this year, 12.5 last year. You're talking about a guy that's probably falling to the 7th round there at the end of the draft. And you're like, man, what are we going to do? Can we get a pass rusher? You can get some production. And it's like, okay, this guy, he can come in and give you something very similar to what they did with Isaiah Thomas, where they were just like, we're going to draft this guy that has some production, maybe not a ton of upside potential, but I think Carl Brooks could. It's going to be a massive change from the MAC to the NFL, but he could be one of those guys that kind of you just stash and he's inactive, or he's on the practice squad or something like that, because he got some traits that you can work with and potentially hone into a good situation. Guys, that is all I've got for you guys in Mock Draft 1.0. I hope you like it. Tell me what you like, what you didn't. You're checking us out on YouTube. Please hit that subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. It helps us out greatly. If you are checking us out on Apple Podcasts, please consider rating us and leaving a review. Helps us out. If you're on Spotify, hit that follow button. We really appreciate you guys. Most valuable thing you can give somebody is some of your time. So I thank you yet again for giving some viewers to me. Guys, I will see you again next time, as always. Go Browns.